Hello and welcome to Great Heights Training. This is A1 Assessor Training, and the lesson for today is observation. In previous lessons we have talked about different methods of assessment, and we covered observation briefly as one of the methods that an assessor will use to assess an NVQ candidate. And the lesson today will go a bit more deeper into what an observation is, how it needs to be done, and give you different guides and useful tips of what you need to do as an assessor to make sure that anytime you go out there to do an observation, it's productive and effective, and it's something that will help you to move forward in terms of the assessment that you're carrying out for your candidate. Observation, as we've talked about before, is when an assessor actually go out to the candidate's workplace, or whether they are on placement, if they are volunteering or working, to observe a candidate while they are at work. So observation is the assessor actually looking at the candidate while the candidate is working. The candidate will be in their workplace doing what they usually do at work, and you as an assessor, you will be there present while the candidate is working. You will be physically there observing your candidate carrying out their normal task in their workplace, and based on that you'll be able to assess whether that candidate is competent or whether what they are doing is good enough for them to be able to receive an NVQ certificate. Observation is something that needs to be planned and agreed with candidates. As an assessor, you cannot just turn up at your candidate's workplace and say you're there to do an observation. It has to be planned and agreed for it to work, for it to be effective, for it to be good, for it to help you, for it to be successful. And observation has to be planned ahead. It has to be planned in advance, because you do not want a situation where you just turn up at your candidate's workplace to observe them and you're not welcome there, or it wasn't planned and the candidate's just doing what they need to do, and whatever you wanted to observe, you do not get to see that. So that's why observation is very important. It has to be agreed. It has to be planned with the candidate, because observation is one of the biggest part of NVQ assessment. It's something that's always there. It's one assessment method that is compulsory for you as an assessor to carry out while you're working with a candidate. Now, why do we need to observe? There are so many other methods of assessment. There are reflective account, witness statement, work products. Why do we need to observe? Observation is very, very important in NVQ assessment. Every awarding body requires observation as one of the methods that has to be present in every single unit assessment. Observation is there for you to be able to gather evidence, for you to show that your candidate is competent, and therefore that's why observation is very, very important. Observation is something that you, an assessor, you will use to assess your candidate's competence. It's something that you will use to be able to show that your candidate has met the required assessment criteria for them to complete the NVQ training. Observation is also done to complement other methods of assessment. There will be other methods such as reflective account, witness statement, work products. But sometimes, as you know, when we talked about assessment planning, you need to make sure that evidence that you gather, they have to be reliable, they have to be authentic, they have to be valid. Sometimes you can ask your learner to write a reflective account, bring work product, but there's not really any way of you making sure that that is their own work. But when as an assessor you carry out an observation, which is you go to their workplace and observe them working, observe them doing what they actually said they do in their reflective account, then that validate what the learner has already done previously. So observation is there to complement, it's there to give more strength to other methods of assessment. It's there to affirm, it's there to confirm that what the candidate said they do, they are actually doing it in their workplace. And you, an assessor, you can actually see it. So you observe them, and when you write your observation report based on what you've seen, the IV will see that. They will know you were actually at the workplace of that candidate and you observe them doing so, which means the candidate cannot be lying. So which makes observation a very strong assessment method. It makes observation a very authentic, reliable, and valid assessment method. Observation is very important. It's what you use to make assessment decision. It helps you to make the right assessment decision. So this is why observation has to be part of your assessment methods. Observation is very, very important. Now, How do you carry out an observation? Like I said before you actually go and carry out an observation at the workplace of your candidate, you need to make sure you plan it, and you need to make sure you agree everything that you plan to do. You need to agree it with your candidate, because if you do not agree it with your candidate, you might be disappointed when you go there. You might get there and be turned away. You might get there and whatever you plan to do, maybe on that day the candidate is not working in that area. Maybe the candidate is not doing that. For example, if you are in health and social care and you need to observe your candidate feeding an individual. Now, that might be something that the candidate doesn't do every day. So if you want to observe them doing it, you have to plan it in advance and agree with your candidate that's what you want to come and see them doing, and make sure that the date that you are going to see them as well, if they are doing that type of duty, which means they are actually feeding somebody on that day. So like I was saying, it's very important for you to plan and agree your observation with the candidate. As I said before, you do not want to be disappointed, and you do not want to lose money or waste time, especially if you're traveling from far away to come and observe your candidate. You don't want to have done the travel for nothing. So very important, make sure you agree and plan observation with your candidate, because they might need permission from their manager in their workplace for you to go and observe them. Any workplace, managers will always require permission. You will always need to give permission. They will always need to give permission to their candidate for you to go and observe them. So you need to make sure that you speak to your candidate beforehand, in advance, agree the date well in advance, and let them speak to their manager and make sure they get the permission. Because for example, if you are assessing a candidate in the health and social care industry and you need to go to their nursing home, that place might have special requirement for health and safety reason, for confidentiality reason. You might need to follow certain procedures, you might need to have certain type of ID, you might need to prepare before you go there. So make sure that your candidate get the required permission from the manager and communicate with you what ID you will need, what things you need to bring, what procedure you need to follow when you get there. Now remember, another thing is your observation has to be done in a holistic way. We've looked at that before. You want your assessment to be cost effective. You want it to be effective. You want it to take less time. You want to be able to hit different criteria in one go. So what you need to do, you need to plan your observation to be done in a holistic way. Look at every unit that your candidate is doing and make sure that you plan how you're going to observe them on every single unit, and try to hit as many criteria as possible in one observation, and communicate that with your candidate. That's why it's very important for it to be planned and agreed with your candidate in advance. Communicate with them. Let them know this is what we want to do. This is what we want them to see. You want to see them doing. These are the criteria. Let them tell you what they do. Let them tell you if it's something that they will be able to do while you are there. So make sure that your observation is done in a holistic way, especially if you're traveling from far away. You don't want to be traveling about 3 or 4 times just to observe one candidate. You want to do it minimum, at least, or maximum twice. So that, make sure for that to happen, you need to make sure that your observation is done in a holistic way. The next thing is, when you go out there to observe candidates in their workplace, make sure that you do not do anything that will disturb the candidate's work. You have received special permission from the manager to be there assessing that candidate. Just make sure that you are there in the background. Observe them while they are working. Do not try and disturb them, especially if it's in customer service and you've got a candidate there dealing with a customer. You don't want to interrupt that just for your own benefit to say what you want to say. So you have to make sure you let your candidate go about their normal business. Let them do what they usually do, and you're just there to observe them. You will have time to give them feedback after the observation, but while they are working, you just need to sit down there and observe them and make notes and look at what is it that they might need to do more or what they might need to improve. You just record that so that during feedback time you'll be able to speak to them and give them the feedback as it is. Especially in health and social care, if your candidate is working with vulnerable people, sometimes the service users might not be happy with you being there. So this is another reason why it's important for it to be planned ahead, so that on that day, when the candidate know you will be coming, they might get special permission from their manager, so they are working with a service user who's a bit more friendly, who will not mind you being there as a third party. So this is very important. Now, even if you're there and you see that as an assessor, I'm sure if you are assessing health and social care, you will have the experience, you will have the knowledge of that industry, you will know how to behave in different situations. For example, if you go there assessing your candidate with their service user and you see that the service user is not very happy with you being there or something like that, you just pick up something, just excuse yourself and probably move out and then speak to your candidate. Maybe when they move on to the next person, then you can observe them. So that's why try and just be flexible and make sure that everything you do doesn't affect the work of the candidate. Like I said before, every single organization will have a procedure. So even you as an assessor, when you're going there, you need to make sure you follow the procedure of that company. Find out what you need to do. Find out what you need to bring. Make sure you just follow everything, because you don't want to make life hard for your candidate. You do not want to create a situation whereby the manager will not allow you to come again to observe that candidate. So you need to make sure you follow that procedure, and where needed, make sure you maintain confidentiality, especially if it's in health and social care. You cannot go out and start talking about how that nursing home or that residential home, how they deal with their service users, what they do. You cannot do that. These are confidential information that need to stay within that care home. So when you go there, you just observe as an assessor, do your report, and go. Not everything else has got nothing to do with you. Even if you're working for a company, even if you go and observe a candidate in a company and you see that the way they are doing some things are wrong, it's not your place to start talking about that or telling your candidate, oh, your manager should do that. No, that's not what you want to do. That's why you just need to know your boundaries as an assessor. Wherever you are in your candidate's workplace, make sure you know what to do, what to say, where the lines are, where not to cross the line. Confidential information, make sure you keep away from them. So these are different things that I'm sure as you start assessing candidates, you will get used to that, and you'll be able to follow procedures and know what to say or what not to say. So this is really about observation. There's not much to say about it, but I've given you the main background of what it is, how it needs to be done, how important it is for you to plan your observation, agree with your candidate to make sure that you carry out an observation that will be effective, successful, cost-effective, and reliable as well. And a few things that you need to know is important. When you go to observe your candidate, you would have planned in advance what you're coming to see or what you want to hit, what are the criteria. So make sure you let your candidate know. Let them know the different criteria you would like to hit during that observation. Give them the criteria, let them look for it, so that when you go there, they will make life easier for you. They will start doing what they know they've seen in the performance criteria, and that will make it so much easier for you to be able to write a report that will hit all those criteria, so that you can complete your candidate faster. The next thing is you need to have, if you are not very familiar with all the units and the standards when you're first starting, just make sure you have your unit standards at hand, which is the units, the standards from the awarding body with all the assessment criteria, so that while you're observing your candidate, you can be making notes there or tick the different criteria that you are already hitting. So at the end of that observation, you will know exactly what you've hit or exactly what needs to be done. So during the feedback with your candidate, you can tell them what else they will need to do next time for you to be able to complete that assessment of those different units. So it's important for you to have that. Always make sure you have something that you can take notes, or if it's possible, you can record as well for your own information, so that when you go back to write your observation report, you do not miss out on anything. You do not miss out on any important information that will help you to show that your candidate is competent. And with practice, I'm sure you will be able to get into the mode of how to observe, what to do, how to do it, what to say. And as part of the A1 training, there's one point where your assessor will need to observe you as an A1 candidate giving feedback to your learner. It's not about observing your learner, it's about giving them feedback on one assignment or one observation that you've already done. And we will give you more information on that, but this lesson is mainly about observation, which is you as an assessor going to the workplace of your candidate and observing them in that environment, looking at what they do and using that to be able to assess them and showing that they are competent in that area. So this is really about observation, and like I've said before, observation is one of the most authentic, most reliable, most valid method of assessing candidates. And usually when you assess a candidate, you would plan at least minimum of 2 observations. One observation can be done at the beginning so that you can familiarize yourself with the working environment of your candidate, what they do, and be able to kind of have more of an idea of how you can assess them. So it's good to have an observation at the beginning. I don't mean the first week that your candidate starts, but probably in the first few weeks, make sure you plan to have an observation there so you can see that working environment. So it will give you an idea of how you will plan your observation, which is the final one. And then the next observation will be towards the end, or anytime you want to do it, as long as you know your candidate is ready for it. It's well prepared, it's well planned, and you know exactly what you're going to do. This is for the second observation. And usually if that's not enough, then you can plan a third one, especially if you go to carry an observation and you do not hit all the criteria or some things are still missing, then yes, you can definitely plan a third observation with your candidate. But usually minimum will be 2 observation, and you don't want to do too many because you don't want to waste too much time. You don't want to lose a lot of money on that. You don't want to spend too much time with one candidate when you've got about 25 candidates that you need to work with. So this is really what observation is all about, and definitely based from your observation, you will know what criteria you've met, and you will know anything that you haven't met. You can use another assessment method to hit those ones. But with practice, you'll be able to do it better. You'll be able to know exactly what to do, what not to do, and when to do it. And if you have any question on observation, which is one of the biggest one, but I'm sure once you start observing, you will get into it. Just email us your questions and we will get back to you on that. We will support you, we will answer all the questions that you may have. And if you want, you can even go online and get more information, but I'm sure observation is something that it's not that difficult. Once you start doing it, you will be fine. So any questions, just email us and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time for the next lesson.